Welcome everybody, welcome back to a brand new video of mine, my round 1 review for AFL Fantasy Classic. I still start with giving you a look at my side, which is not the best side out there. There's a lot better, about 22,000 sides better, so had a few misses. I got the ruck completely wrong, so well done the people who predicted that, and there's a few other players that I missed as well. But we'll try to fight back. It's a long season, so that's going to be my goal for the rest of the year. Just scrolling down with the forwards there. Yeah, and well, anyway, enough about my side. Let's crack on to the round review, which I want to do. So we'll start with our first game. Our first game was Richmond versus Carlton. In this game, we saw Dustin Martin, who did really well. Up here, Dustin Martin. We had the stats there for Dusty. The ball was in that forward line a lot. He was attending the centre bounces as well, like he does for Richmond. So Dustin Martin, a really good pick if you picked him. I don't think a lot of us did. I think we were thinking maybe he would drop off in price at some stage. So we'll just have to wait and see there if a tag comes for him. The next popular pick was Jaden Short. Jaden Short went in bursts. If you look at his graph, if we bring that up, his graph there in the third quarter, he went boom. Didn't have much in the last. So I was at some points when I was watching Jaden Short in that game, I was like, oh, I really have missed out here. But then in other times, it wasn't as bad as I thought. So I think that preseason form was a bit of an overreaction, although those halfbacks did generally score well across the round. Alright, on to the next player that I'd like to talk about from Richmond was Prestia, who I was sort of looking at during the preseason. Did attend enough centre bounces, so he was straight back in there, even though he was under a bit of an injury cloud. And the other player is Shai Bolton, still kept up his centre bounce attendances, although the scoring wasn't quite there. But for what you paid, you would be holding that for another week. But I don't think many people have Shai Bolton, to be fair. The other one to look at is Nane Curvis, who did what most of the rucks did, underperformed. And I'm not sure I want another week of data with the rucks, although it doesn't look good at this stage. With the rucks, it really does not look good. Alright, anyway, let's get on to Carlton. Carlton had more score, but more spread out. More spread out for Carlton. What we saw was Sam Walsh do quite well. 4 free kicks against. Looked great. I actually was surprised he didn't crack the ton, but yeah, I think that he will in weeks, and some weeks he won't, but that seemed to be a good pick. Sam Doherty really came back late. Yeah, junked it in the second half. The first half didn't look like a good pick, but then got more junk time in the second half. I think that was due to Richmond really pumping it in there more in that second half. The one that I would be looking at was pretty good was Adam Sard. Adam Sard again, that running role off half back. It would be interesting to see how coaches deal with those sorts of players and be wanting to curb their influence, no doubt. Ed Kerno was still hanging around the ball. I thought he would drop off this year, but he was still getting those centre bounce attendances. So one to watch will be to see if Zach Williams takes his role or takes our boy Paddy Dow. I didn't start with Dow. He did score 64 and did have pretty good centre bounce attendance use. So that's one to watch for Paddy Dow. I wouldn't. I've seen some people not happy with that score and wanting to trade it. You'd leave that. He made money for you. He had the role. You're not trading him in, but you're definitely not trading him out either. That's fine. I can't see if Paddy Dow is your biggest issue. I don't know. I'd love to see your team, but yeah, Paddy Dow. If you have him, you'd be happy with that. You'd take those points. All right, I think that's it. All I've got for that game. We'll crack on to the next one, which is Collingwood versus Western Bulldogs. Collingwood versus Western Bulldogs was an interesting game, no doubt. Bulldogs really got a hold of the ball and scored really well, which I thought I thought they wouldn't, but they did. So, and they did feed all the mouths, so that's one to think about. But anyway, we'll crack on with Collingwood. Big one with Collingwood was Jordan Ngoe, whose first half looked very, very good, but Bucks moved him forward in the second half. And you can see he scored 16 points in the second half and really did screw us over. Anyone that picked him, like myself. And Bucks pretty much has come out and said that he's going to play the going forward, and their forward line's crap. It is like they've got Rusco and Henry. I can't see them getting a game next week, and Degoe will have to play forward. So if I didn't have Rowell and Dangerfield, I'd be trading. And I think if you're in a position to trade Degoe, you've got to trade him. That role isn't there. It was in the first half. It's not there in the second half. It's gone. So that's a trade. We look at Collingwood, Jack Crisp, who did pretty well. I think he plays that back of the square role quite nicely. He when they feed it out to him and he kicks it forward, I think they like him in that role. And he scored pretty well for 91, considering that all the Collingwood scores were down. I think that's a role that could suit Crisp, and he'll probably score pretty well throughout the year. Who else? We got Grundy. Grundy did okay actually. People were not liking his ruck performance, but considering rucks are all down, he was versing Steph Martin, who's known to drag down ruck scores. Grundy's never a round one performer. If Grundy, I reckon he's going to be perfectly fine. Actually, I think he'll probably be. He'll definitely be top two ruck at the end of the year. It's just I don't know if he'll be number one. I'd love to see a bit more of Max Gawn, but we'll talk about Max Gawn in a minute. Who else have we got? We've got Taylor Adams, who was 68 from Taylor Adams. Interrupted preseason there. So he put him on your watch list for later on. He'll definitely go down in price. And so he might be one that if he can turn that around, it will get a good bargain and it'll be a good pick up, Taylor Adams. I had Jeremy Howe. I think a few others tried to sneak him in as unique. In the first quarter, I was all for Jeremy Howe, and then he seemed to be manning up people as they were coming back, which I don't like. I want him in that loose role. So that's one I really thought with the game style, Jeremy Howe, the way Collingwood play that possession game would really open up those marks, but not if he's manning up people. Let's hope that Bucks puts him in more a loose role than manning up people. Who else do we have from Collingwood? Braden Sy, who I put out in a few of my videos, crabbed it. Lucky I got off him. I was still sort of thinking about him for round one, but got off him. Yeah, crab. You'd be looking to move him on. I can't. He probably won't even play next week, to be honest. Side bottom's back, so I think Sy with on to make its way. And the big surprise back it was Josh Dacos, only scoring 19. He was due to break out. A lot of people were looking at him as a sneaky, and he's just gone and done that. So maybe again, put him on your watch list. He could be one that you could pick up if he turns that form around. All right, let's get on to the Bulldogs. Jackson Macrae. Jackson Macrae just went out and did Jackson Macrae things. This game probably is made for him. Again, they had a huge score. They had 38, which is big. And Jackson Macrae topped that list. I think even if that does drop off a bit, I don't think Jackson Macrae will. The only thing is if a tag comes for him, but when you're in a side next to Bont, I can't. It's very hard to see a tag going to Jackson Macrae. So that's a good pick. The only thing you'd have to be careful of is if Bevo has a meltdown or something after a loss and says, Macrae, you're out of here, which has happened in the past. And that's definitely why I was wary of Bulldogs players, the Bevo factor. And Jackson Macrae is one of those players that normally does find himself in a weird role and scores down. So just one to watch out with. Not much you can do about that. Jackson Macrae, though, at this stage is a great pick. On to the next one, Bailey Smith, who also did really well out in a wing. Pretty much non-existent centre bounces for Bailey Smith. So unsure if that scoring will continue or with the way the game's being played now, it doesn't really matter so much about centre bounce attendances and more about being in the midfield and just being one of those sort of link up ball user players that take marks. And Bulldogs have plenty of them, so we'll have to see. Watch this for Bailey Smith, although he's relatively cheap, so he maybe someone you might jump on, but I would don't think that sort of scoring is going to persist. Same with Lockie Hunter, although every year Lockie Hunter does really well. He's sort of you can never pick him as well because he doesn't play in the middle, but again that might change this year. So same comments really there as Bailey Smith. Caleb Daniel, who junked it late, a 50-point last quarter is going to help you get to 111. Which is, I guess, they were just trying to hold on to the game at that point. Collingwood do give up a lot of points for those sort of players, so Caleb Daniel scored well this week. We'll have to see what he does next week, although I think a good score might be coming up against West Coast as well. So a really good start to the season for Caleb Daniel. Our next one, Josh Dunkley, who was a good pick for forward, turned out. My only thing I had was the Bevo factor with Josh Dunkley. I thought he was going to be number one to be kicked out of there. He wasn't. Turns out he wasn't, and he did really well. Again, Bevo, if you're one of the Dangerfield traders, I'm not sure if you'd go straight to Josh Dunkley or you'd try to chase some value there. I personally will be chasing value, but Dunkley will be a good replacement on the surface, although we just don't know what Luke Beveridge will do, and it's still a concern of mine. Even with this game, it's one sample, and Beveridge has had years of chucking players in weird positions. So we'll have to see there. Bailey Williams, a good game, not really a fantasy relevant player. No one, I hardly saw him at all preseason. So I'll skip him. Liva, who I guess we all wish would somehow not, or for fantasy anyway, not playing the Dogs midfield, get traded or something, it really would help us out because he's the one that can't play anywhere else, and all the other players seem to get farmed out, and Libba just gets his uh, unchallenged midfield time. So again, that's Liberatore. Bontempelli, another a ton as well for Bont. I think he did play forward. I know I was talking about how picking up players. He was one of the players he was picking up. But again, in this high scoring game, Bont still tunned. So just one to watch there. Maybe Bont does play some more forward time. We'll skip down to Adam Treloar. Adam Treloar had back from injury, hardly played in the centre bounce, and one to put on your watch list. He's a jet, and if he can get anywhere into this mob up here, points galore for Treloar. So that score might just knock some value off him. We'll be able to pick him up nice and cheap. And then we had Anthony Scott, who did pretty well for us, a 50 from a 170k rookie. I think he'll get picked again, so that's a good pick. But not necessarily a must-have if you're looking to swap your rookies. I think Anthony Scott probably wouldn't be one you'd chase. You'd just pick up the next guy coming through. And McNeil, who I didn't pick, I don't think a lot of people picked. Scoring reflect my thoughts, so just a pass there. All right, on to our next game, which was Melbourne and Fremantle. Melbourne and Fremantle. We'll start with Clayton Oliver, consistent as ever, 107. Can't really fault. You got exactly what you paid for there with Clayton Oliver, so you'll be happy with that. Petrarca, 90, but it seemed like the scores were down a little bit this round for like those top price players. So I'd be holding Petrarca. It seems fine. As of this recording, James Harms seems to have gone down with an injury, which is really bad news for people that picked him. You would have been loving that pick. You would have been on a high. James Harms, one of those mid prices. He did well, had the role, did have kept that midfield role, and then now he's injured. Tough luck. That's fantasy sometimes, and it really sucks. It does, and it's a forced trade, and it was an injury that it's not like it was even like a leg injury, which you can tell those sort of other risky picks. It was a break and in the arm, and yeah, that's tough luck there. All right, James Jordan, who looked great, and with that being said, James Harms is out. I think Viney's out for a bit longer. Um, Probably there'll be more midfield time for Jordan, so he's really good. If you missed him, he's almost a must-have, like because he will go up a lot in price, and he's got the role, and he's probably someone you can chuck on your ground. So that's be a good buy for you, James Jordan. Onto this man, Max Gawn. Max Gawn, there's his chart. 50 points in the second half. So if I'm looking at the bright side there, he seemed to work into the game a bit. Disappointing he didn't put the Meek to task, but didn't seem to have that game. Definitely didn't have that intercepting off half back, which uh, really gets those scores high for Max Gawn. So that's where I'm worried about. If he's a 100-point player, that's definitely a fail from me for paying up, and for the owners of Max Gawn for paying and getting up and getting Max Gawn. I'm going to give him one more week. I'll probably give him another 2 weeks. I'd love to see what he does against these rookie ruckmen before a potential move on. That being said, if you hold him that long, you've already lost the cash and you're behind that far in the game. So it might just be a hold, and because there's no ruckman really that's putting their hand up at this stage. There's a couple that might make a little bit of coin, but there's not much really to write home about, and we still don't know what the ruck's going to look like week in, week out for these ruckmen. If you're doing Max Gaunt and putting Flynn onto the field, you'd probably tick that off, and you'd go chase one of those jet midfielders for your captain because you're going to need a captain. So that's one thing to do with Max Gawn. That's just some of my thoughts on Max Gawn. But at this stage, I'm more than happy to see what he does against the next rookie ruckman that he's got this week. Who else do we have for Melbourne? That's about it. All right, let's go on to Fremantle. Brayshaw and Chera and even Sarong. I'll group them all together. That next generation midfield for Fremantle all scored reasonably. I started with Sarong, who didn't do too bad, considering he was out with soreness that week before in the Amy game. But I can see him pushing that average up to around 100, so that's fine, especially for what I paid for Sarong, or if you paid for Sarong, that'd be fine. Shearer did a bit better week one, but it's a long season, so they'll probably be the same, to be honest. Brayshaw was a little bit more expensive, but he looked really good. Nat Fife's the interesting one. Still playing midfield to a degree. So I have to see there. Fremantle's midfield's actually quite interesting. They seem to share it around a lot more than having a set combination that go to those centre bounces. Also, Mundy was in there, so someone I thought would drop off and play forward this year, but he was still into those centre bounces quite a lot. So I'll just be monitoring what the Fremantle midfield looks like over the next few weeks. And other than that, I don't think we had Meek, who did really bad. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't play him next week. Sean Darcy's back, and I can't see how he would even fit into their forward line as like an extra, like a second ruckman. Or maybe they do because Darcy might be underdone. We'll have to see what the selection looks like there with Meek, but I'm pretty sure he'll be dropped. That's just in my books, but I could be wrong. All right, let's go on to our next game, which is Adelaide and Geelong, with Adelaide getting the upset win. I think no one saw coming. I definitely saw. I thought it was going to be a bloodbath at the hands of Geelong, and Adelaide would not score that well, but they did. They scored all right. Rory Laird, Jet, can't go wrong with that pick. I think he's a very common pick, so if you don't have him, you're sort of behind the game there. But I think most teams have him anyway, so yeah, that's with Rory Laird. We had Tex Walker score 100. Welcome back, Tex, I guess. You avoid, even at that price point, avoid. Uh, yeah, he's not doing that every week. No way. All right, on to our next, Lockie Scholl, who did really well, actually. People had him, and he did excellent. He would definitely be a buy this week. You're going to make money from him. Rowell was good. I don't expect him to go out and score 100 each week, but definitely Adelaide are going to look to use him, especially if these rules the way they are. And he wouldn't even be the first on other coaches' radars, and probably till later in the season. So he's probably got a free hit at it for a while. So he's a good pick. Lucky Shoal, definitely one. Go out and see if you can get him this week. If you can do that, I would definitely be a fan of that. You're going to make money and he's going to score well. All right, Rory Sloane, who was a popular pick. I called on him myself, but he was still a popular pick, and he did all right for his price tag. You got above what that was, so you'd be happy with that. Onto the James Rowe, who I thought, oh, small forward in a bloodbath game. He'll start off as a bad start. How wrong was I? He came out and did really well, and now he's a rookie that you'd be wanting to have in your side. And if you're only got rookies to shuffle this week, definitely go. And you don't have Rowe, go get him. If you've got him, enjoy the price rise and enjoy getting rid of him when he's like 350k and you make all that money off him. So that's enjoy that. Um, who else do we have from Adelaide that was relevant? Riley O'Brien, another ruck, well down. I think a lot of people would sort of gone off him. They either went the big two or they went like a different ruck strategy, but I don't think O'Brien was very well picked and he didn't score that well. So we need to monitor the ruck situation. But Riley O'Brien might be one that really does suffer this year. And we had Butts, who was a 207 guy. That's what you're going to get. That's what you'd be expecting each week. So, yep. And that's about it for Adelaide. Let's go on to Geelong. We had Parfitt get another ton. He's sort of teased for a few years now. You couldn't pick him at that price or being in midfield, but if he had slid forward, that would definitely be a different story. But let's move on. Dangerfield suspended for 3 weeks. Forced trades, hate them. But it might be a blessing in disguise. They sort of talked about Dangerfield going forward late there. That was the role last year that saw him down a bit. Yeah, you'd want him playing in the midfield. He definitely played in the midfield for this game, but moved forward later in the game, so that's not what we wanted to see. And if that's the case, it might have been a trade in a few weeks anyway. So we'll have to see, especially with Cameron being out. That I think we're all expecting Cameron and Hawkins to be in that forward line danger in the midfield, and maybe that wasn't quite going to be. So it might be a blessing in disguise, but we might be getting Dangerfield back in at some point during the year. So we'll have to wait and see for that one. Tom Stewart didn't quite get the free ball usage off halfback that I was hoping for, and the coaches that selected him. Geelong obviously had a bit of down day as well, so they'll be back in Geelong next week. So I expect Stewart to be back to his hundreds and just getting easy ball off that halfback. Who else do we have here? We've got Menegola injured. Good player. I think the rules might suit the way Menegola plays actually. So uh, just monitor that one, see if his scores return. You might be able to pick him up cheap. So definitely one to check there. Um, who else do we have out? Jordan Clark, who is another one that people are saying trade. I would definitely be holding Jordan Clark in a side that normally scores very high. They've been a very high scoring team for years. They're back at Geelong next week, so we could see them definitely increase that scoring. That's no doubt, and I would not be surprised Jordan Clark just gets some easy ball and a good price increase as well as score increase in the coming weeks. So just hold. I'd be holding him. I think you'd always have definitely more pressing issues to trade than Jordan Clark. And that's about it for Geelong. They will see players come back over the coming weeks, but they've lost another few players, so Jordan Clark will probably hold his spot there. All right, let's get on to our next game, which is Essendon and Hawthorn. This was a very soft game. Probably two of the bottom four sides in my early books. They could both come out and prove that statement wrong, but I just think that's the way it's going to head for both these sides. So, yeah, probably the easiest game of the round for scoring, and that reflects across the board. We saw some really good scores like Andrew McGrath, although he didn't really attend the centre bounces that much in the preseason. Came out, played a really good game for them. So, but still, not too many of the centre bounces, only just under half for Andrew McGrath. So, Jai Caldwell really is in there. That's a nice segue to Jai Caldwell. A lot of tackles for that score. Yeah, I'm not. That's not the greatest thing because it doesn't look like tackles are down generally. So if he's not tackling, just say we take off 5 of those tackles, he's 84. But still, for what you paid, that's still a good price. 22 disposals. I think you'd if we pick Caldwell, he'll make us money regardless. It might be a stepping stone at some point. Maybe when he has his buy, he's got that round 13 buy, you might be able to like flick him to around 12 player, and he might be just coming down if he's curved. Then we'll have to see. But I'd be saying if you don't have him, he's a buy. Like he's gonna make you a lot of good money early, and you might even be able to like just use him as a stepping stone. We'll have to see. Or the role could continue, and he could be a forward that you just keep. So definitely a buy there with the value he presents. We'll go on to Zach Merritt, who looked like he was going to have a field day. 54 point first quarter, and I was very much thinking, wow, have I missed this? The Gorn captain thing will come back and these people will crush it. But he sort of slowed down throughout the game. I think as players, with the way the bench, the limited rotations are going to spend a bit longer on there. But when they're out there, they're going to spend a bit longer out there. So I think you'll see scoring like that where they go gangbusters and they have real quiet bits and then they go gangbusters. So Zach Merritt, very good pick. If you picked him, well done, and he will have a good season. I just don't think it's be as magnified as people were putting out there post round one. All right, we saw Heppel in that half-back role. Oh, I missed the other guy in the half-back role that did do really well, and you probably will. Is another buy is Hind. Hind scoring that 100 guarantees he's got good cash flow for the next 3 weeks at least. Anyway, very good role. The ball probably will be back there quite a lot for Essendon, so there's every chance he'll be picking up some cheap kick-ins and just some cheap points back there. So I would have no hesitation getting Hind this week, especially with the way things are, and he'll make you some nice cash. So that's one to look for. Who else do we have? We got Parrish, who didn't quite do. I thought he'd be a 100 player, but didn't quite match up. Didn't quite get the centre bounce attendances there. With Caldwell really pushing in there, it is gonna like the Parishes and McGraths are gonna get pushed out a little bit. It's just depending on how much scoring they pick up from this more outside sort of game. Who else do we have? We've got Sam Draper, who did okay in the ruck, especially for what you paid for him compared to what the big guys did. And with if rucks are going to be if that's what they're going to be 80 players, then Sam Draper's a fantastic pick on that basis. But we'll have to see again. I think easy game. I think even for Rucks, this was an easy game to score as you'll look over and you'll see McAvoy and Segler on the other side both scored well, being Ruckman, which just doesn't reflect in other games across the round. We had Harrison Jones debut for 63. Another one I thought, oh, key forward, won't score that well. Probably won't score that well in other weeks, but this being an easy game, got enough points. It'll be a real test. What they got Port Adelaide this week. I can see a 30 incoming. But for now, he's made that coin and got a good break even, so he'll make a bit of money and he'll play. He'll play quite a lot, so he'll have that a slow burner in my books. The two that didn't do too well were Ned Cahill and Nicholas Cox, and I think that's in line with their previous scoring, so nothing really to go on with there. All right, let's go on to Hawthorn. Tom Mitchell. Tom Mitchell did really well, back from the injury last season. Just where he said came out and said his legs weren't quite strong enough, and then really built into this game and scored quite well. If the Titch of old returns, this game style is going to suit him. He used to always do that running around and getting those easy marks, plus sixes. So if he can do that, he will be a really good pick this year. I think a lot of people soured on him with the injuries in the preseason, but uh, Tom Mitchell might be one that we have to get at some point because I can see him doing those ridiculous scores, especially as he warms up into the season. Will Day got 103 off that half back line. There's always points on that Hawthorn half back line, and it was Day. Be careful though, Scrimshaw's returning, and I think his price point sort of rules him out. Big Boy McAvoy also did really well in the ruck, 88. Had split it with Segler, which is a big red flag for me, and I think in the harder games he won't score that well at all. Who else we have? We got Tom Phillips. Tom Phillips didn't get in that centre bounce. I think that had to be expected when people would come back. It wasn't going to be like that preseason game, but his outside game did score quite well, and I was pretty confident he would be a 90 averaging player. So one kick off that. That's what I thought Phillips would be, and was probably the safest pick. So I've got no dramas there with Tom Phillips. We scroll down the list. Warple at 67, which is I thought he'd take his game to the next level and sort of be up close to that 100. So I'll chuck Warple on my watch list as one that I could pick up cheaper later in the season. And then the Hawthorn rookies of Brockman and Kazitsky, both scoring average scores, okay for positions, probably the last bench spot for their respective lines. So they're going to be slow burns. Let's hope they just keep getting picked. All right, let's go on to our next game. Our next game being Brisbane and Sydney. Brisbane and Sydney. Sydney with the upset win. We had, we'll start with the Lions. We had down scoring across the board for Lions. Really low score. Really low. They're a low scoring team, but they scored low, and that's reflective. We'll go with Dwayne Zorko, who I think everyone sort of wrote off, but he had a 95. Didn't play as much forward as I thought, but definitely was his centre bounce usage was down. So, yeah, I'll be happy with that fade. I think the scoring for Zorko will probably taper off throughout the year. We had the Big O, who I think people also went cold on for his price. Sort of got about what he was priced at, so I guess he could have made worse decisions in the ruck. But I'm not sure what that's going to look like in the future with the rucks. It's still up in the air in my book. Look at Lockie Neal, a big down game. We'll lose a lot of money from that 68, that's for sure. We'll have to see what Lockie Neal looks like next week. It could be another hard game down at the Cattery. But I've got no doubt at some point Lockie Neal will be really good. I think he's the sort of player, again, that should do well. So I don't know where that score come from. Maybe it was just a down day for the Lions. I had Joe Danaher do not much. If he was going to score well, this should have been a game he scored well. Obviously, the Swans came out and beat them. But, yeah, I guess that just proves the point why you do not pick key forwards. And he just proved it. We had Harry Sharp, who chipped in, was a surprise player for our back line. I picked him just because he wasn't a key back like the other guys were. Didn't score the best. No certainty to keep his job, so it might have been a mistake, but I'd definitely rather have a running sort of player than a key defender as one of my cash cows. Normally they've got more chance of scoring better. And Fullerton, 21, didn't do much. Yeah, next, I guess. All right, let's go on to Sydney. So Callum Mills scared people off with that preseason game where he didn't score well, but look at that score, 121 in the midfield, doing the role, looked really good. Yeah, that preseason game probably scared people off. So if you got Callum Mills, you can be laughing now. If you backed him in after that, that's fantastic. Defender playing midfield and scoring well. So well done for that pick. Next one, Errol Goulden, who everyone's talking about. What a player. yeah, I can see him being a long-term hold for Sydney, and he should get enough games. He should make us a ton of cash and be a very easy upgrade at some point. So Aaron Goulden, definitely. If you do not have this guy, that he is a must-have. If you don't have any forced trades to do, you need to go get him. But I think a lot of people have him anyway. So um, yeah, that's that. Tom Hickey, an interesting one. A lot of disposals for Ruckman, and a very nice score and a price point which makes us a lot of cash. Uh, you'd need a lot of balls, a lot, to jump on him, but it could be possible. You could do it. Um, not one for messing around with the rucks. I've been burnt in previous seasons doing it. It's just so hard to get back up. But if this is the year where rucks are going to see scoring decline, then there's no reason you can't get Tom Hickey and get those probably around 80 scores and use that money elsewhere. Isaac Heaney, yeah, he did play forward. He scored 80, which he was priced at. I think a lot of people had already jumped off and seen that, so that's where that is with Papley. That's confirmed. And we had Chad Warner, who scored 57. That's great. Uh, yep, Chad Warner, tick him off. That's exactly what you want from a rookie, so it's good. Braden Campbell, for what we paid for, we probably could have got better value from some of those other rookies and spent that money elsewhere. But I feel like he will play quite a bit for the Swans, especially because Callum Mills worked out so well and they'll want someone in that role. So he has a role there. I think they stated pre-season that we are going to play a lot of the kids, so I can't see him losing his spot for that. So we'll have to see what teams look like, but I think Campbell should be alright. Although you might want to move him to your bench. I think you might have some better options to field than Campbell. Alright, let's go on to our next game. Our next game was North Melbourne v Port Adelaide, and we'll start off with Jaden Stephenson. Jaden Stephenson, 128, huge game, huge game. North Melbourne do regain a lot of midfielders, so there is that. But um, I can see Stevenson still doing pretty well. More of an outside role. That's fine with me. That sits fine with me. I think they'll want to use him, and even if he does uh, drop off a bit, he'll still make his cash, and maybe we can trade at some point. But that cash is definitely there right now, so go take it. And he should score well, at least for the next few rounds, where those players come back, and then we can reassess when everyone's back. Jack Zeeble, 95 of halfback. Pity the way that fantasy works, his score wasn't dropped more, but that was a good move, and he's in that halfback role, which seems to be quite juicy for players this year. Who else do we have? We had Tom Powell, 68. That's great. Um, yep, confirms that you want him on your field in your midfield, and those extra dollars were confirmed. So I think they'll keep playing him. Good score as a junior, so tick there for Tom Powell. We have Menadue, who came on. It was a late inclusion. We wouldn't have, but pity we didn't see him more over the preseason and know this, because he might have been someone that you could have put that D6 on. But hindsight's really good. I don't know if I would have done it, but I would have liked to have seen more of him during the preseason. But that's just me. I picked Tom Tyson. Very low time on ground. I'm probably a bit stuffed with this pick, to be honest. I'll probably need to move him on. I just don't know if he won't make cash. And they do have players coming back. I'm very nervous about that pick, and hopefully he keeps his spot. Hopefully they put him on the ground more. Pre-season, I guess he was fighting for his position, is why he did so well. And now I'm very nervous. We'll see. They played the Gold Coast, I think, next round. Yep. So could be alright scoring. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. Alright, who else do we have for North Melbourne? Lazaro, one of those annoying players named debut, but they mean injury sub. Clubs shouldn't do that. In fact, for that to be his first game, that sucks. So This injury sub, what a shit rule. Alright, let's go on to Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide, Travis Boak was flying until he got he got that corked right leg. Um, Look at that for scoring. No Rockcliffe. Wow, that's huge. He would have been like close to the top scorer if he kept going in that last quarter. That's big. We'll talk about Rockcliffe as well. He seems to have been pushed out of the side, which is crazy. But he did get the 27, so if he does reclaim the spot, he'll drop a ton of cash, and we'll be able to pick him up cheap. So we might get a cheap pig. Who else? We got Ollie Wines, who got a 91. I think his scoring might actually drop off a bit. He doesn't seem to be. He's more of that contested player. I think we want more of the run around and mark sort of players. Dan Houston, not quite the scores that we saw in that preseason game. Of course, they were playing witches' hats in that preseason game, so yeah, that's probably in line with what he's priced at. Willem Drew, he seems to have got Rockcliffe's spot, and he did quite well with it. He scored 80, so for what he was priced at, that's great. It's a good pick, Willem Drew. Monitor that one. You probably won't go buy him this week if you don't have him. I've got him, but if he continues to do well, he might be a buy. Zach Butters didn't quite live up to what he was billed at. He scored at what he was priced at, and even with Rockcliffe out, didn't pinch that midfield time. So it's a hold there, but just watch out with Butters. I'm not sure if we will see that hype that was around him. Who else for Port Adelaide? Bergman, 53. Yeah, 170k, 53 scoring. That's fine as long as he holds his spot. Bonner probably going down, probably keeps him in the side. So that's good for us, not good for Riley Bonner. And that's it at Port Adelaide. All right, let's go on to our next game, which was the game in the wet, the Western Sydney versus St Kilda game. Tim Taranto, although centre bounces were down for Tim Taranto, scoring was all right, 103. So yeah, that's fine. I'm taking that 103 for Tim Taranto, and he's a good pick. So we'll jump on to Matty Flynn. Matty Flynn rolled ankle, so watch out there. I just watch him during the week, but he did really well. He gave Hunter a bath and had plenty of stoppages to get those hit outs, got the possessions as well. So what we normally expect from a ruckman. So it'll be interesting to see what he does this week. Who they got this? They got Fremantle this week. Might be versing Sean Darcy in a game out west, which could be hot again. We'll have to wait and see what it looks like there. So it might be a very uncontested game, and especially with Fremantle playing that possession footy, so his score might be quite down next week. But he'll still make us cash. I'm just unsure if you want to play him as you are too. So let's go on. Callum Ward is at one. He very cheap. Took Tom Green's time in the midfield. If that continues, Callum Ward would have been the buy at the start of the season, and Tom Green not. But even now, I think there's better buys than Callum Ward. So I'll have to see what that looks like. Isaac Cumming, oh my god, this guy. I've been on him, I've been off him. Now he looks that role. He did quite well in that role. He got the role and he scored all right. So, my God, I wish you'd come out in the preseason game and done well. I think everyone would have had you if you'd done that, but it would have made our selections back there a lot easier. So, yeah, Cumming, he does look like he has that role, but everyone's off him now anyway. So, yeah. Who else we have? We had. Yeah, there's Tom Green, 49. He's also one I would probably be looking to move on in the future if you had him. And we had Tanner Bruin, 29 in the wet, playing that small forward role. I think everyone said he wasn't going to kick 4 goals every week. He didn't, and that's the result. That's what you'll get. So probably a pass there. On to St Kilda. St Kilda always seem to have different players score well. They just got so many. I always say to everyone who asks, they've got like a lot of B grade players and not many A's, And every time you think someone's going to come at A, they slip back down into that B tier. I'm not sure if that's the way they set up or they just never get the best players, but this game is more proof of that. We saw seeing Billings, Membry, Gresham all doing well, even Hunter Clark, and then like drop offs from. Well, Ross hasn't been good for a while, but now it's Steele. Higgins, yeah, they've just got like these guys really do have a lot of mouths to feed, and they try to feed them all, and that just never seems to quite work out. So yeah, that's St Kilda. Jimmy Webster, 48 for his price, maybe just a pass, and you'd be holding onto him for another week. But that being said, he's 100 cheaper than Jordan Clark and scored similar, so yeah, definitely another week for Webster. That's fine. See if he can pump out a bit of a score, get a bit of a price increase. All right, let's go on to our last game. Our last game was West Coast versus Gold Coast. West Coast was Sheed doing his complimentary round one, really good score. As more people move into that West Coast midfield, his scores will drop off as it has in past seasons. So I'd be giving a pass to Dom Sheed. Who else do we have? We have Tim Kelly he back to his scoring well. So yeah, not many people have Tim Kelly, so that doesn't matter. Oscar Allen, interesting one. 4 goals, maybe playing a ruck role, but it looks like they're playing Vardy and Nat Nui, so maybe not. I thought he'd be the second ruck, but he's not. So don't know if the scoring will be there for him. Shepherd's score was down. Their halfback scores were. Oh no, Hearns was quite good. So normally one of them does quite well, and with it not playing, of course. Duggan didn't move into the midfield as expected and didn't score as well as expected. So if you went for Duggan, that's a shame. Gaff, Gaff was getting tagged by Miller at the stoppages. So there's that, and yeah, they really did put attention into him. He only scored that 70. He's someone who the game should suit this year. So maybe we get a price dip, and then we get a really good player in Gaff. So put him onto your watch list. Xavier O'Neill, who was 310, scoring 60, so pretty similar to Paddy Dow, really. And you would be okay with that. You'd be fine with that if you had him. And that's it for West Coast. Let's go on to our final team, which is Gold Coast. Gold Coast really are chipping that ball around, and they've moved to a possession sort of game style. It looks like it benefits their halfbacks. Markov, who's a good pick. Bowes as well with that 14 marks, 28 kicks. That's huge. Swallow not so much, but even Lukosius, yeah, there's another one, 11 marks. Collins, who's a key defender, 10 marks. So yeah, you can really see how they're trying to play. So that's good. So if Markov, I think would have to be a pick the way they use him. I would, if you want to go buy a back, definitely put him on your radar. It'd be between him or Scholl. So that's a buy there. We had Witts, who a lot of people had in the ruck as an option. Scored about what he was priced at, but that's better than having these rucks that didn't do quite as well. Playing 2 ruckman, we'll have to see what he does next week against Goldie. So Witts is fine at this stage. No dramas there. Will Brodie, who I was hoping would crack into the midfield, that didn't quite happen. He actually scored late there, like that first half, terrible. So Will Brodie, a good pass if you've got him. Maybe you'd want to be looking at moving him on. Darcy McPherson, yeah, that's what it looks like. He did his preseason 100, and then this is what he'll score all year, I think. And that's it. Oh, Matt Rowell. And look at that. He was actually scoring real well. Look at that. That was in a midfield role for Matt Rowell. Got taken off. His last record score was at the 19th minute mark, so that's on track for 100. So I think he would have gone close to that. So it's a real shame he had that injury and 16 drop cash out for a while. So maybe he might be again a pick next year with that in mind. All right, so that's it. That's all I've got for my season review. Oh, sorry, not season review, round review. If you like this video, please slap a like on it, comment in the video. If you want to follow my round reviews during the year, please subscribe to the channel. Hope you have a good week in this next week, and high scoring, and thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks and bye.